Hello and welcome to the next CHC expert interview. My name is Stefan Poschik from CHC Corporate Health Consulting, and today I have such an honor to have a really nice interview guest. And so just let me introduce you, Marlette Jackson, to you. Marlette, welcome to the interview.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for the time. Marlette, just introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? What is your area of genius?
Area of genius, no big thing. So my name is Dr. Marlette Jackson. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the Global Director of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at Virgin Pulse, which means I oversee all of our strategic planning. I oversee our different employee impact groups, our JEDI Council. I oversee conflict management, our different trainings and workshops, and just everything having to do with JEDI. So our policies and practices to make Virgin Pulse the most inclusive company that it can be. I've been doing this type of work for about 8 years now, building and scaling different organizations through both a consultant and practitioner space. So I'm super excited to be here today to talk a little bit about DEI and why it matters.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. So let's jump into the topic. So in my experience, I see a lot of companies who don't really know what it is all about. They have an idea what, for example, inclusion or diversity is all about, but they don't really know what it is. So can you give us a definition? What is it and what is it probably not?
That's a really great question. I think in order to make sure everyone's on the same playing field, we have to start off with common terminology, right? So that we all come with this base level and baseline understanding. And so at Virgin Pulse, we do it a little bit differently. So we call our internal work justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. So it's a little bit more broader and more defined than your traditional diversity and inclusion work. So you may be asking, well, why do they talk about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion? Well, it's because we believe that JEDI work centers and grounds traditional diversity and inclusion efforts in a framework that both prioritizes and advances structural and systemic change. So this type of framework acknowledges that we can only advance equity, increase diversity, or create environments of inclusion if our systems, our policies, and our processes are steeped in principles of structural change. And so let's start off with what we are most familiar with, which is diversity, right? So when we think about diversity, our mind often thinks about race, nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation. And yes, diversity encompasses all of those demographic characteristics, as well as cultural differences, political ideologies, disability, social class, or religious affiliations, as well as individual differences like personality, learning style, or life experiences. And diversity is about the composition of a group, right? It's not about one person. It's about when you look at a group, are there folks with different identities, perspectives, and backgrounds represented? So diversity asks the question, as I look around this table, are there a variety of identities, backgrounds, and perspectives represented here? And inclusion is one step forward. So inclusion means that all people, regardless of their background, have the right to be respected and appreciated as valuable members of their communities and teams. So inclusion asks the question, is everyone around this table being heard? Are all voices being valued? And equity is a little bit different. Equity ensures we all have the same access to the same opportunities and resources so that there's an equal opportunity to thrive. And equity asks, is this fair? And when I think about what equity means, I'm often reminded of the story that helps break down the difference between equity and equality. So there was a professor who came up in front of the class, and it was an intro to kind of government class. And it was a bunch of first-year students who were eager, excited about their first year. And so the professor comes to the front of the class and asks the class, okay, how many of you think that equality is what we need in a society? Almost everyone raised their hand and was like, yeah, we need equality. The professor asked, how many of you want an A in this class? And everyone said, yes, I definitely want an A in this class. So the professor brought a trash can to the front of the class, and the professor wrapped up some and said, okay, wrap up some people paper balls, and whoever can throw their paper ball into the trash can will get an A in the class. And this is a bunch of first year students, so they were all like, yes. And, you know, we had some people who were like LeBron James, got it in. We had some Marlette Jackson, so you were in the front row and you still didn't make it in the basket, but, you know, it's all good. And they had someone in the back say, "Excuse me, professor, I'm not sure this is fair. Like, people in the front row obviously have an advantage to shoot their kind of, paper ball, and that I don't. I'm way in the back." And the professor said, "Well, you all said equality is the goal, right?" And everyone was looking around like, "What?" And the professor said, "Well, equality is sameness. Equality is when you all get the same opportunities at the same time to do the same exact thing. Equity understands that there are different barriers that, to no fault of your own, you have. And so what equity does is it says, let's reduce these barriers so that we all have a fair chance." And this situation would be maybe not everyone shooting the paper ball from where they were, but everyone removing those barriers so everyone had a fair chance. So again, equity asks, is this fair? And justice, well, justice seeks to dismantle barriers to opportunities and systemic disadvantages that people don't have because they may have different access to resources and opportunities. And while diversity asks, are there a variety of identities represented? Inclusion asks, is every voice being heard? Equity asks, is this fair? Justice doesn't ask anything. Justice demands that we remove the structural, systemic, and legal barriers to provide more equitable opportunity. Sorry, it was a long-winded answer.
No problem at all. That's really awesome. For me, what's interesting is, did you start it with such a broad approach to all these topics, or actually where did you start? And I mean, this is so evolved what you are telling me right now. And so how can a company probably start with this topic, or should they go to this broad approach you are doing already in your company?
So I think it's important to start with the broad approach, starting with justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and then take time to understand each piece. So you may want to say, hey, we're approaching this through, a justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion lens. We're going to start with diversity. So we're going to start with what we're a little bit more familiar with, we have a little bit more research on, what we may have a little bit more expertise on. And so we'll start with different types of, for example, cultural heritage events, where we'll celebrate folks of different nationalities, race, ethnicities, gender identities, sexual orientations. We'll start there, but we can't stay there. Then we're going to move into thinking about leadership development, right? If we look at the data and we see that women are less likely to be in leadership positions, or people from certain nationalities or people from certain races are significantly less likely to be in leadership positions, then we create programs and we create processes to help provide more equitable representation, right? To get greater diversity. Because if you don't see yourself represented in a leadership position, then you don't know it's attainable. You don't know it's possible. And you may go to somewhere else to find that. So starting with, celebrating, providing community. Think different companies have employee impact groups, or some of them call employee resource groups, where you can identify with folks who come from a similar background or heritage, or, so start there. Then let's go to leadership development, right? Based on the data and your kind of organization of who needs more, and then start integrating this work into your business, right? So I think of a wonderful example that Clorox gave. So I just went to this kind of DEI executive summit, and the chief diversity officer of Clorox was talking about how so Clorox owns Burt's Bees, the lipstick, or not lipstick, the lip chap. And what they did for Pride Month was, they had an event internally, but also what they did was they rearranged the colors of their chapstick to be in the colors of the Pride flag, and then sold that and packaged that for Pride Month. And that's one way you can kind of walk it like you talk it, right? You are showcasing to your consumers and to the world that you support Pride, and you're organizing your actual product in a way that shows you support this as well. So it's beyond, internal events or internal community. It's beyond the leadership, but it's really integrating into your business and how you approach it.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Do you see a lot of companies who are already in this stage of involvement? Because so many people are talking about these topics, and so many companies are talking about this. But what I see, for example, here in Europe, or especially here in Austria, where we are located, most of them are just talking about it, and not a lot of people or especially companies are really implementing this. Yeah. So what is your experience with this?
Yeah, so when I was a consultant in the Bay Area for a variety of tech companies, it was quite interesting because in the Bay Area, so kind of in California, it's known as this like bastion of liberal, ness. Everyone cares about these topics, but even there, I faced some severe pushback and some challenges on really doing the work. Not just crafting a company statement, posting it on social media and saying, we are in solidarity with this, group, or, we support, women, or whatever the topic may be, but it's really about the transition from words to action. There's this thing called woke washing, where you will put performative statements on social media or, any type of platform or medium to kind of showcase that you care about these topics. But when you do a deeper dive, there are so many internal inequities in your own company. So it's like, why don't you clean up your own home before you go about telling everybody else about how great it is, right? So why don't you make sure that the people in your business and your company feel like they can be their best selves, feel like they can achieve higher levels of success, feel like the policies are not, highlighting or discriminating against one person or another. So for me, the first step is, what are your processes and what are your policies? Look at the entire talent lifecycle. Look at your hiring processes, right? When someone goes into your website, do they see themselves represented? Or do they just see one group? When they are submitting the application, what questions are you asking? When they look onto your website, do they see that there are a variety of community groups that they can join? When they look into your senior leadership on the website, do they see themselves represented? And if the answer is no, then you may not get the diversity that you're looking for. So starting there, looking at your hiring processes, when talent acquisition is interviewing folks, do they know how biases can creep in? Things like similarity bias. Similarity bias is if I'm interviewing someone who also identifies as a Black woman, the likelihood that I'm going to give them a more favorable rating is much higher than if someone who does not look like me. And that's how we have this homogenous pool of employees and workers at a company, because of things like similarity bias. So what can we do in our processes to make sure that we're reducing the effects of similarity bias? Same thing with promotions. So many results and so many surveys have shown that if you look like your manager, you're more likely to get better ratings. So what processes can we put in place to make sure that doesn't happen? So I would say start with the policies and processes, look at each stage of a talent life cycle and see how you can be better.
That's awesome. That's really cool, because I think there is so much potential in the future in all these areas, and especially the COVID situation the last nearly 2 years already gave us so much more opportunities to have a very diversified workforce in our company, because we have much more opportunities to have people who are working remote, or we can include so much more people, because I think it shouldn't be a problem anymore that somebody who has physical problems with his body, so is not possible to join a company when remote work is no problem anymore. Yeah. And so I think that this will be a really, really huge opportunity when a company tries, and when a company starts to go into these areas, and when they really, really understand where the potential is behind all these topics. Yeah. So the last question, Marlette, is for a small company, for example. Yeah. Do you have any best practices for a small company when they start, and how this is really a benefit for both, because the company want to grow and want to make profit, and the people want to work or want to have a diversified workforce?
Absolutely. So it's important to the business side, because you want people who want to be there. You want people who want to be engaged, feel included, who have a high level of well-being. And we know from countless, research studies that if you feel included, you're more likely to stay at a company, and you're more likely to have a higher well-being. And we know that feelings of inclusion and feelings of higher well-being are directly connected to productivity and innovation. So if your employees feel like they can be their true authentic selves, if they feel like they're included, they feel like they belong, they're more likely to stay, and they're more likely to provide the most innovative, releases for your product. So you have a direct incentive to make sure that those employees feel like this is a place for me. And what I would suggest for smaller companies just starting out is make sure you have experts guiding the way. Oftentimes you'll say, oh, you're a woman, you can help lead this effort, or you are a minority, you can help lead this effort. And that's not simply the case. We can't make that assumption. Or you have a disability, you should kind of lead these diversity and inclusion efforts. And it's like, maybe they just want to exist. Maybe this is not something that they want to champion. Let's not assume just because they come from a minoritized or marginalized identity, they want to do this work. So either hire a consultant or hire someone who has the expertise to kind of lead your internal efforts. That's the first thing. The second thing is to kind of audit your talent processes, audit your promotion processes, conduct focus groups, and listen to the people, whether it be an internal survey or whether it be some sort of focus groups that an external kind of person is doing so that your employees will feel like they can actually tell the truth, and then derive your strategies from that. You may find, for example, that your employees with disabilities feel like they are not as included as your employees without disabilities. So maybe one of the strategies is to create an employee impact group for folks who have disabilities. You may find that women in the survey say that they don't see themselves represented in leadership, so they don't feel like they belong. Well, then maybe you need to hire an executive search firm so that for your next few leadership positions, they can be intentional about gender diversity, right? So it's about finding someone who can champion these efforts, who's an expert. And it's also about listening to what the people want and creating strategies based on the need.
That's really great. That's such a great topic, and I'm really looking forward to the HR Future Night, where you will be one of our experts to this year. So this will be really great. Yeah. So Marlette, there is so much more to discuss to this topic, but I think there will be a lot of people who are really interested probably to reach out to you and to connect with you. What's the best way? Where can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
Yes, so you could reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just type in Marlette Jackson and connect with me there. I'm more than happy to engage with you, answer any questions, and just kind of connect with you and see what's possible.
That's perfect. Thank you again. Thank you so much. And have a great day. And yeah, for all you guys out there and gals out there, we will see you at the HR Future Night, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.